So, writer-director Pete Docter is definitely one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and probably just one of my favorite humans of all time. I mean, the guy has got one amazing filmography over there at Pixar. Not only did he write and direct this film, Soul, along with his co-writer and co-director Kemp, but he also wrote and directed Monsters, Inc., Up, and Inside Out. And this film, like so many in the Pixar pantheon, is incredible for a number of reasons, not least of which is just how imaginative, how expressive, how unique and different it is. I was constantly being shown a world that dazzled beyond even what I could possibly imagine. And the thing, though, that really made it very, very special is even while the world that I was shown is not one that I was in any way accustomed to seeing or even accustomed to considering, it always was connected to my experience, connected to this reality. So as I was watching this beautiful film unfold before me, two things were happening simultaneously. I was going, wow, I've never even considered that before, but also that makes complete sense given my own experience, given my own life. That's the magic of Pixar. Creating something remarkable and other and perfectly connecting it to the things that we know, understand, and believe. That is the magic of Pixar. That is the magic of Pete Docter. That marriage of the unexpected and the unfamiliar and the dazzling unique with the understandable, relatable, and the empathetic. And this is why I can, with much assurance, crown this film my favorite of 2020. And yes, I know what you're thinking. This has indeed been a rather measly year for new film releases, but I can almost guarantee that even if I had seen 52 other new films in theaters, that this one would still remain the top for me. Going in, given just the name of the film, as well as that one teaser trailer that I watched a number of months ago, I was very curious just how deep this film would be and how kid-friendly it would be. A lot of the films from Pixar oftentimes are what I would call animated films for adults. Yes, there are certain elements within them that are kid-friendly, but in a lot of ways, they are meant to be viewed by adults, considered by adults, and enjoyed by adults. And one of the things that I was thinking about this film as I was watching it was, yes, indeed, this really is designed for an older audience, but something that is just so brilliant, talking about that balancing act that we were mentioning a moment ago, is the fact that there were still elements that were broad and silly. And I could imagine even my 3-year-old son watching and getting a kick out of. And I just think that's just such a wonderful thing to do for us adults as well, allowing us to, in this great way, to connect with our youth and things that are silly and heightened and whimsical, and allowing that to open us up. And then ultimately, when we are opened up, we are allowed to be spoken to on that much deeper of a level. Now, I really should take a second to just talk about this film's narrative by not talking about the film's narrative. One of the things that was really wonderful for me was the fact that I'd only seen that one teaser trailer a number of months ago, and that teaser trailer really didn't give barely anything away about the plot of this film. And this is probably true about all films. I just tend to spoil myself rotten with trailers, but I really loved knowing barely anything about what was going to happen next. And not only was it the fact that I didn't know what was going to happen next based upon the lack of marketing that I'd seen, but also the filmmakers were just so light on their feet. One of the uniquely difficult things about animation is the fact that these films are made over a number of years. As such, the story is constantly just being beaten into submission. They're just making sure that every single moment is connected to what's going to happen. Every single thing that you set up in minute 5 has to be paid off in minute 50. This image needs to be set up here so that it can be paid off there. And because it's just worked and worked and reworked and reworked, sometimes it can start to feel just a little bit clinical, like certain boxes need to be checked. And there are even some Pixar films that do feel like that for me. But this film absolutely, just astoundingly avoided that. To use a very silly term that one of the characters in the film was oftentimes using, it was constantly jazzing. It was constantly improvising. It was constantly listening to its own internal rhythm and voice and following that. Caring about and paying off those elements that they'd established earlier, absolutely, but also able to, like I mentioned earlier, go to such wonderfully surprising places. But then, every single time that it did, I would always go, oh, that was the most logical thing to occur. That had to have occurred. Or, that's why they were showing me that element earlier on, so that it could be paid off in this specific way. Or, wow, now I completely understand what this film has been trying to tell me this entire time. And I'll actually circle back around to just the overall theme and message of the film in a moment, but I would love to just talk a little bit about the visuals of this film. And now, when it comes to Pixar films especially, but really all CG animated films, the ability for the artists to create this perfectly photoreal world is kind of a given. That's gonna be there. We know it's going to be beautiful. We know, especially with Pixar, that the texturing and the lighting are almost going to be photoreal. So that's not really what I focus on when I walk into a Pixar film anymore. Instead, I always ask myself, is that the right choice for this film? Should it look photoreal? Should the lighting and texturing be reminiscent of the world around me? And actually in this film, or at least in about half of it anyways, it was absolutely the right choice. It was meant to ground us in something that felt so tactile and real, to remind us that basically the character we're watching on screen, that is us. He represents our experience. But the really special thing about Soul was the fact that we had this completely whimsical, completely quote-unquote unrealistic part of the film as well. The one that took place in the Great Beyond, as well as in the Great Before. Those parts of the film so appropriately juxtaposed the reality and the dimensionality of the real world. They were undefined, lacking a great deal of real texture, because they hadn't yet lived. That was the point that the film was trying to make. So the visuals on this film just perfect, just so communicative, so evocative, and so affecting. Now, just as a brief aside, which will make complete sense here in just a second, I love Christmas music. I'm going to admit to you right now, start listening to Christmas music probably the day after Halloween, just like that. It brings joy to my existence, and I love it. I love it. Now, it should then tell you a lot that yesterday, on Christmas Day, I hit pause on that Christmas music just so I could bask in the glory of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's soundtrack for Soul. Now, it's not as if this soundtrack was particularly memorable in the themes department. There was no one theme that I could actually hum for you right now, even though I've been listening to it about 24 hours straight on repeat. But it so perfectly evoked what this film was about. Its ethereal qualities, its eternal qualities. It was simple, it was poignant, it was moving. Okay, back to what this film was trying to say and the theme of the whole piece. Very similar to what I was doing with the narrative discussion, I am here also going to be extremely vague. But let me just say it worked wonderfully for me personally anyways, and I would dare to bet will probably work for a lot of you as well. If any of you have ever had a dream deferred, if any of you have ever felt like you've been just in this holding pattern waiting for your life to begin, if you're so convinced that it's about getting to this specific job, about meeting that special someone, about having that beautiful child to hold in your arms, this film is for you and speaks specifically to those longings and those desires that are found in all of our souls. And it certainly spoke to my soul in an extremely just filling and powerful way. And for all these reasons, it should come as no shock to you at all. I'm going to give the film a 5 out of 5 and a soulful heart. I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film though, so definitely comment below and let me know. And finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on the channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.